Good evening, everyone. My name is Gord Stewart, Superintendent of the Langley School District. And thank you for tuning in to take part in our Langley School District Education Restart Town Hall meeting. It's certainly something new for us in terms of these times. And obviously, we'd love the opportunity to do these live, but the conditions we're in makes that difficult, obviously. And yet we know that there's many of you out there in the community that have plenty of questions as we kind of move into the start of the school year, and we wanted to take an opportunity tonight to share some information, add some clarity. We just sent out our district restart plan, and it's dense. there's a lot of information there, and trying to kind of sort through that, it can be difficult. And while I want to certainly encourage you to do that, and there's certainly more documents forthcoming from your school, and also our website that keeps getting updated. We thought we could hopefully tonight provide a little bit of clarity. And we appreciate many of you sent in a number of questions, and we're going to take time to work through those questions with you, as many as we can. There will be some of you that are going to also have questions tonight that are going to occur to you during the presentation. And you can still send those in to our feedback on our website, and we'll continue to generate those and collect those, and we're going to update our Q&A section of the website going forward, and so you can continue to take a look at that in terms of if they're not addressed tonight. So we'll do certainly the best we can in the course of the next hour. Yeah, some opening comments. You know what? Who would have thought? A year ago we'd be in this situation, and certainly when spring break happened and the pandemic was upon us, we had to certainly make adjustments in our education system and all of society, and we're still living with the pandemic, and we're still living with the confidence that's been shaken as a result of it, and certainly the school system's one of them. People remain concerned, and I understand that, and part of this is that tonight is to try to address that angst and that anxiety. And I'm a father with 3 kids myself, and my wife and I, we'd be very worried also with our kids. You should be worried about their safety. You're going to want to make sure that they're certainly going to be in a good place going forward. And so we want to make sure that we can address that, and we certainly understand that. You want to be informed. If you're going to make a decision about your child being in a school or looking at any kind of alternate form of education, you want to take the time. You want to take the time to look through documents. You want to take the time to meet with staff at your school, take advantage of that orientation week, and you're going to want to take some time to make sure that you sit down with your child to make sure they're in a good place going forward. What I need to assure you is that we wouldn't be embarking on this path if we didn't think it was safe for kids. Our public health authorities have told us that this is something that we can do safely. Providing we put certain conditions in place, which we are doing. Our staff are outstanding, and I know that they're going to create the conditions there to not only make sure that the place is safe for kids, but they're going to provide them an outstanding learning experience. And the face-to-face instruction piece, is it something that I believe in? Absolutely. I wouldn't be in public education. I wouldn't be in this job if I didn't believe that. And while I know there's a place for technology, and I know that for some children there's absolutely no other way, given their circumstances, that they can learn. And I know for some families, based on their circumstances, that it's best. But for me personally, and for everyone in our system that are educators, certainly the public sector, yeah, we've seen the power of face-to-face. We have staff right now that desperately miss connecting with children. We have children desperately wanting to get back to meet with their friends, and certainly also to connect with staff. And the power of that is absolutely amazing. And that social, emotional, mental health piece is something that is so important to kids, and schools can play such a great part in. And learning. The last 5 months, we'll have fallen behind. The remote, it was a Band-Aid, but it was certainly not something you can continue to pursue and hope to have the same success around learning that you would have if you were face-to-face. So yeah, we're going to battle hard. We're going to battle hard to do everything we can to ensure that our places are, again, not only safe, you can feel good about it, but that you get back. But we know there's work to be done, a lot of work still to be done. And but I'm hoping you'll work alongside us. What really we also need to do, and certainly again, while I appreciate the questions, we need to do this with civility. We need to treat each other well. Educators love children, me included, and there's absolutely no way that we would want to do anything to jeopardize our kids or not do what's best for kids. So while I know, well, some of you are going to be concerned and anxious, I would appreciate if you could have a dialogue that is always respectful. That's all I ask. I know we won't get everything right, despite our best efforts. But you know what, and I appreciate suggestions and thoughts going forward. But what doesn't do that well is when people can't act in a manner that I can hear your message. So I want to make sure that you think about that, whether it's through social media, email, or any other form, that we continue to conduct ourselves in a way that we can be positive role models for our kids, and again, conduct ourselves in a manner that we can feel proud of. So on that note, we're going to work through some slides with you, and then again, work through the questions here. And I've got a great staff in front of me here tonight too that are going to be part of that. I'm going to do some introductions in terms of the people that are here. So we've got Brian Isley, our Secretary Treasurer, Woody Bradford, Assistant Superintendent, Mel Gill, Assistant Superintendent, Barry Bunyan, Assistant Superintendent, Mike Morgan, Director of Learning Support Services, Kendra Simonetto, Principal James Kennedy Elementary, Kevin Reeve, Principal Peter Ewart Middle, Maggie Gobriel, Principal R.E. Mountain Secondary, and Joe Abshire, our Communications Manager. I should also let you know that this is again an operations meeting. It's a chance to kind of share with you some of the details at school-based sites and as a district that we're putting in place for kids. I know our trustees, they're not part of this process tonight, but I want to assure you, these have been difficult times for them also. We haven't been able to meet in the format that we're normally accustomed to. They are incredible advocates for children. They absolutely take your emails and information and get that to us. And they will continue to advocate on your behalf. And so I want to make sure that I express my thanks to all of them tonight for their role. And I know some of them are tuning in and are certainly involved very much in terms of everything that's unfolding in terms of the information we're putting forward. So I want to make sure I did that. As always, I always like to acknowledge that, again, the work that we do for our children and families is taking place on the traditional unceded territories of the Matsqui, Kwantlen, Katzie, and Semiahmoo First Nations. For the format for this evening, we're going to start off with, again, I've made a few comments, I'll make a few more, because I know that one of the things percolating most out there is, what are the options for our kids as we kind of move into the opening week. Then we have, again, representatives from elementary, middle, and their secondary schools. And they're going to share a little bit, they're going to put their parent hat on. And they're going to kind of walk you through a little bit of what are some of the things I could see. And we thought that would definitely be helpful for you. And again, in doing everything we can to take that angst down that's out there. And then our communications manager, Joe, has done a great job of collecting all the questions you've been sending in. And we divvied those on up, and we're going to work through all those the best we can tonight. We know that people are busy, so tonight is being recorded. So if you're chatting with someone who's missed tonight, they're welcome to go to our website and be able to take a look at that going forward, and that will be available to them. Again, I mentioned here the face-to-face piece, and again, I think our provincial health officers, they've been very clear. In fact, we meet with our Fraser Health representatives, and Assistant Superintendent Mel Gill is a contact here, and they've assured us, they've said, yes, absolutely, that the risk they feel, again, and they're the professionals, this isn't our district staff, that this is our domain, they've assured us that this is right for kids. And they can feel confident that they can make sure that the information you need gets out to you. If there is any cases that take place, we defer to them. They'll walk us through that. And again, we're going to continue to provide those links and access for information for you going forward with respect to that. And going to the options piece, again, you've heard me mention face-to-face, but we know with people a little nervous out there, they've asked about other options. We do have a UConnect program. And it goes K to 12, and it is really focused, it's not DL in the sense that you are expected to be there twice a week for some face-to-face instruction. Really, the main reason behind that is the limitations around DL. And they do know that there often is a need for that kind of human contact piece going forward. So that is available. It operates out of Simons. Langley Education Center operates out of the Langley Secondary School campus, is really designated more 10, 11, 12 for the most part, and also has another range of options in terms of DL and also a bit of a blend going forward. Homeschooling is something there that not many people pursue. It's very challenging, and it certainly gets more challenging as kids get older. Absolutely. But you also do need to register with your catchment school on that one if you choose that as an option. And the other one we've put here is transition programming at catchment choice school. And we put that down there because, and this is one that we continue to get information that changes daily in terms of what the ministry expectation is of us. Certainly they would like to maximize folks getting back there. But we also know that we're hearing that there's sometimes going, you know what, I'm not sure I'm ready yet. I might be ready in a couple of weeks. I might be ready in a month. Maybe it's 6 months. But right now, I'm not sure. And, why won't the school district offer us something else if that's the case? Why can't they keep my seat at the home school and allow my child to do something remotely until they're ready to go? And I want to walk you through some of the complexities to that and let you know that we are considering everything we can in terms of possibilities for our kids, but there are certainly some significant challenges around this. First of all, in terms of I don't get funding, or we don't get funding as a district for an in-class seat and an out-of-class seat. I don't get it. If you decide to do DL, I don't get funded for both. So if I have 15 kids in the classroom and 15 kids accessing something else, there is a significant, I need another person. I need another body to be able to do both until people are willing to kind of make that transition back. And you can imagine if this is on a scale of 20, 30, or 40% of the population, that's a lot of staffing that I'm quite frankly not sure that I'd be able to meet. So that is certainly one significant consideration here. How long do we hold the seat? Is this something that we hold it for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 months? Because certainly you can imagine that's problematic. You can also imagine students transition back. We've heard trying to kind of keep those cohorts as tight as possible. And should families that have made that commitment have kids that are coming in and out of the classroom on a constant basis, a daily basis, for a number of weeks? And then do we have to reconfigure? Do we have to say, hey, we have 60 or 100 fewer kids at a school, so that's 2, 3, 4 less teachers. Okay, so let's reconfigure all those divisions, or let's close blocks at a secondary school, and then so we can have those staff available to do that. And then as people trickle back, what do we do with those? What do we do with that staff? Synchronous. I've heard people say, why can't you just video the teacher? Just put a video going in the class so the kids can be part of that. That is also, we have tried that, and it's something that you can maybe do for the course of a half an hour, but to do that all day, boy, is that limiting to the teacher, and is it certainly limiting in terms of how you interact with the class. And then the bottom line is how many are interested, and that's something that we really need to determine. And I need to know, is that they don't want to come back at all? Do they want to come back, but they only want something where they attend maybe twice a week? They don't. Or they don't, I don't want to have any kind of human contact whatsoever in terms of a school. I just want to have the stuff sent home. We really need to gather that information, and that's where you're going to be absolutely key in terms of this process. Because once we as a district have an understanding in terms of the numbers that are involved here, at that point we can start to work with all of our school-based administrators to say, what can we do best to help those families get back? And before I kind of launch a little more, I should let you know in terms of on a call just a couple of hours ago, and the deputy minister of the Yukon was chatting with us and said the same thing. They've been in school for 2 weeks, and shared with us to say, you need to know kids there and the families as they got closer towards the start date 2 weeks ago. Wow, talk about angst, the headlines, and this is scary, we can't do this, what are you doing to us? And they weren't sure what they were going to get on that opening day. And what ended up happening is over that first week, as kids made their way back, what exactly was expected. They connected with their friends. They connected with the magic of being with a teacher. They connected with the magic of being part of a school community, and they came back. and they haven't looked back, and they feel very safe in making that. And I think I put that out because that's that step that I really need people to take to be making a very informed decision versus something based right now simply on things that are, again, maybe in social media, or again, not having the chance to see something firsthand. So the process to date, August 21st, we submitted our Education Restart Plan to the Ministry of Education for review and approval. And again, hence, people said, why didn't you survey before it? Why would I? Why would I put out a survey when you don't even have any information about what the restart looks like? I think you deserve to at least know that before I start going out and asking people what they'd like to do. August 26th, we'll communicate approved plan to parents. We've done that. We had to wait until that date. On Friday, you're going to get the school-based plans. We're hoping to have those all out by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And along that is an absolute key is a survey. And we're going to need folks to complete that survey, because that's going to start to give us our first initial understanding of what are the numbers that we can expect to be returning. And it'll also give us an understanding of maybe what we're going to have to do to address those folks that are not yet ready to do this. That survey will, we look to have it completed by 3 p.m. on August 31st. We know that there'll be certain people away, there's camping, it's the summer, and so on and so forth, but this will be, again, our first best attempts at trying to discern where we're at. Orientation week, September 8th through the 11th. That's something, again, if you're nervous, that's where I'd really be saying, gotta get out there for that morning or afternoon or day what the schools provide, and get a chance to see it in action with your child. And that's the time that if you're still feeling discomfort, approach that school administrator and have those conversations. And we have September 1st to 11th school-based staff to follow up with families. So if you're not ready to return, there will be a conversation there. And if it's a case you haven't been in, obviously that'll be encouraged. But if after all that you still say not ready to do that, then yes, we'll sit down at the drawing board and see what we can come up with to see if this is going to be something on a short-term basis that we may need to put in some supports to try to get people back, or if it's something that's going to be for the year, what else out there that we can put in place for families. So that's our process going forward. So on that note, what I'd like to do is shift over to Kendra Simonetto at James Kennedy Elementary, phenomenal principal there. And we're going to walk through just some of the things that you can expect as a parent for your child to see that opening day and weeks ahead, and so that we can kind of give you a good understanding of what's up. So Kendra, I'll have you come on again.
Good evening. I'm here to share with you some of the pieces to the Elementary Restart Plan, and hopefully give parents and families a little bit of a sense of what will it look like when I send my child back to school. Elementary principals and vice principals have been working really hard over the last several weeks to develop a plan that is thoughtfully designed for our elementary students, with health and safety as the paramount piece. But while we are developing that plan, we never wanted to lose sight of what's best for kids. So I'm hoping that what I can do tonight is share with you some of the components of what you might see on a regular daily basis when you take your child to the elementary school that they attend, so that you can prepare yourself and your family for the small parts that will be maybe slightly different for your experience. One of the first things that elementary principals have really discussed is how do we make sure that we are able to offer the experience for students to arrive safely to the campus. So some larger schools have chosen to introduce a staggered start. And what that means is alpha name, last name alpha, A to L, would attend at the regular start time. And about 10 minutes or 15 minutes later, you would have your M to Z families arrive. And what that does is it allows for us to have a safe transition for 50% of our population to enter the school, while allowing the children to enter slowly. They can start their hand washing routines, take a seat into their classroom, and then the next 50% of the population would then join and do the same routines of hand washing and taking their personal spot. And the convenience of the A to L and the M to Z format allows for families to have one drop-off time, allowing for the siblings to enter the school site at the same time. Another piece that we designed that was purposely done was to ensure that while we know that we have cohorts, and you might be wondering about how cohorts are designed in the elementary realm, Many schools are deciding to design the elementary cohorts based with the considerations of the maximum of 60, based on grade groupings. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to design our schedules so that students of similar grades are able to interact with each other, perhaps in outdoor learning opportunities or active play opportunities, and have that safe opportunity to engage with other children of the same age. Another structure is a staggered recess and lunch. The staggered recess and lunch allows the same format as the staggered drop-off, in which 50% of the population would be outside at a single time, or perhaps having an inside recess. And the benefit of that is it allows us to have really safe structures in place to ensure that supervision of students is able to be matching all the population that is outside at one time. In the classroom environment, what you'll start to notice is that there are some systems in place where students in their own station or in their own seat have opportunities to engage in learning with their counterparts in the classroom, but there might be materials that they have access to that they are able to have on a regular basis. And what that allows us to do is ensure that the safety of those materials is kept to that child, and then it reduces the need for access for other students to have any access to those materials, and therefore you don't have to be too concerned with the cross-contamination factor. Another piece that we have introduced is we have introduced bathroom usage by one person at a time. And many bathrooms in elementary schools have multiple stalls. So by reducing it to one child at a time, it really allows us to ensure that physical distancing is met for students that might be in different cohorts. Another piece with the staggered end is when, similar to your beginning of the school day, you would have the end of the school day also be a staggered finish, about 10 to 15 minutes apart. Again, the alpha last name would be one group that would depart, and then the M to Z group would then depart about 15 minutes later. And that allows the families, again, to pick up their children and their siblings at one time slot. The other piece that we wanted to make sure that you understood is that the site will be a closed campus. And the reason that we've made that decision before and after school is to just ensure that the population of the school is able to exit the property in a swift and safe way so that students may return. Perhaps a family might want to come back to the school later in the evening and enjoy the park. That's perfectly fine. But making sure that families are able to leave safely in a swift and prompt manner is what we're going to be making sure that is in place. And the closed campus is also for the controlled environment, making sure that visitors have an appointment if they want to visit the school, they call ahead. They also have one controlled access through the front door where a sign-in procedure is in place so that we are able to have the controlled environment maintained within the school. There's a lot of pieces in place, and I understand that that's a lot to process for families, but our hope as elementary administrators is that families know that these systems and structures are specifically designed so that families are able to feel that their children are safe in our care, we are doing what's best for kids, and we're never losing sight of the health and safety for your child. I'd like to pass it over now to the middle school administrator, Kevin Reeves.
Thank you, Mrs. Simonetto. Middle school and high school, and for our entire district, everybody is taking health and safety as our guiding principle. When Mr. Stewart asked us to take a look at this from a parent lens, all of us have children in the school district, and my family is no different. Our son will be going back to school, and we definitely don't want to be putting him in harm's way, nor do I ever want to put myself or my staff or our students coming back in harm's way. And at the core of everything that we're doing, we want to make sure that we are keeping our connection to our students and to our community and making sure that they have the best experience that they can. And we're excited to have our students back. Like Mr. Stewart said, we did not get into this business to do this from a distance. We want to have our students experience school with those hands-on activities. And as a parent coming to middle school, it will look slightly different than it will at high school and elementary school. And we will have all of our students, except for the first week. First week, our students will arrive by Alpha, A to L, and M to Z. A to L on the Thursday and M to Z on the Friday. But the following weeks after that, all of our students will arrive at the same time, and we'll have different entry and exit doors for each cohort. And our cohorts are created in groups of 30 to 60 students. And we put a lot of time of putting those students into cohorts which will meet their learning needs. We have students coming from a variety of schools, and in some cases up to 5 different schools. And if we have students coming from different districts, it's important for us to have a blend of experiences from a wide variety of the schools that come to us. And we do our best to make sure we have balanced classes that meet the needs of all of our students coming. Our bell schedule, we will have a common recess and lunchtime for our entire school. And that recess and lunchtime will take place inside the classroom. It will be supervised, and then our teachers will have opportunities to take the students outside either before the recess, which happens at a specific time, or after lunch or after recess in controlled areas that will be dedicated to just one cohort of students. So they'll be able to go outside and play and burn off some of that much needed energy. Will students be moving classrooms when they come to school? They will be in one specific classroom, except if they're going to explorations or if they have a PE class. But for the rest of the day, they will be in one specific classroom. And if we have team teachers that are part of that cohort, they will come and visit that specific classroom. So like Mrs. Seminetto talked about, we won't have that cross-contamination, and students will have a safe place to be, and that will be their classroom with their cohort of classmates. For us, the first week will be really important with orientation and making sure our students know the different protocols, because school will look slightly different when they enter and exit a building. When they're in common areas, they will need to be masked. When they're with a teacher that isn't part of their cohort, that teacher will have to be physically distanced or be wearing a mask. So there'll be different situations, and as the week and the weeks go forward, we'll be working with our students to make sure they're comfortable, our staff are comfortable, and that they're getting the best experience possible. The structures of the day will be the same. Students will still have that opportunity to go to woodwork, art, foods, drama, makerspace. All of these opportunities still exist, and all the structures of middle school still exist. It will just be that they will be doing it in a smaller cohort, and their ability to be with the whole grade group will be reduced. But again, we'll still be making those connections with our staff and our students to make sure that they have the best learning experience possible in times that sometimes it's important for us to make sure that they've got those experience when there's times that they are changing, and making sure that they all have a great experience. Traffic flow within the hallways will also be controlled, making sure that we have flow that the students won't be in contact with other cohorts. So for us, health and safety is at the core of what we do, but making sure that those connections and the social emotional learning of all our students is at the forefront of those decisions. Right now, I'll hand it over to my colleague, Mr. Magdi Gobriel from high school.
Thank you, Mr. Reeve. Yeah, as a secondary principal, I think it was really challenging for our students at the end of last year. So many of them are trying to figure out how they're going to deal with post-secondary, and trying to ensure that they get through the coursework that they need to get through in order to be successful moving forward. And that was really challenging to do in a blended environment or in a remote environment, really. And so we're trying to figure out in the secondary schools now how to ensure that we can provide an environment where kids can really be successful in doing what they need to do, while creating a really safe space for them to learn and grow. So we'll be creating an opportunity for students to have an orientation in the first week. The last 2 days of the first week, first 2 days, I think the teachers will be getting together to prepare and for us to work on our protocols and processes, and then we'll share those processes with students on those last 2 days of the first week for first set of classes to start on the 14th. So some of you probably heard about the fact that most of the schools around the province, secondary schools, have elected to go to a quarter system, and a big part of that is because it's much easier, I think, to manage classes that might be in a blended or remote environment if you're only carrying a couple of classes. And so, the quarter system will be such that students will take 2 classes, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, for 10 weeks, pardon me, and then every 10 weeks or so, roughly 43 days, they will go to the next 2 classes and the next 2 until they complete their 8 classes by the end of June. We're setting it up so that for junior students and senior students, so to speak, and different high schools are dividing their juniors and seniors differently depending on the size of high school and the complexity of their timetables. So some schools will have grade 8s and 9s in their junior cohort. Some will have up to grade 10 in their junior cohorts. All schools will have grade 11 and 12s in their senior cohorts, and some will also have grade 10s in their senior cohorts. And those cohorts are generally put together based on one of the classes that the students are taking. So the junior classes are being set up usually around an elective. And the reason for that is because there's multiples of academic classes. There's many English classes, many science classes, but there's often fewer elective classes, and so we're trying to create cohorts around those elective classes to help make sure that students get the electives that they chose, and that's been really challenging, to be honest with you. The grade 9s then would, or the juniors, depending on what the juniors are in that school, will generate that cohort around that elective, and then we'll probably hold on to that cohort for either the quarter or possibly up to the full year. So the students in the morning class and the afternoon class would create a cohort for that quarter. And so for most of the secondary schools, we'll be sitting around the 60 level. Some schools though will cohort up to 4 classes. And so we'll be up to 100 students or so in a cohort. And then at the secondary level, we've created a very interesting system where the mornings we'll have a full class, and then the afternoon will be blended. So the afternoon will be, in a sense, physically distant. And because of that, we'll be able to just cohort the students around the morning classes. The morning classes full-time, the afternoon classes will be blended. Students would come in, for instance, first half of the alphabet on Mondays and Thursdays, second half of the alphabet on Tuesdays and Fridays. Wednesday would be a remote day to support the students in their online work. And that would be done, all that would be done in a physically distant manner. And then halfway through the quarter, the other block would become blended and physically distant, and then the physically distant block would have full-time attendance. So again, in terms of that, we're trying to minimize the contact between students, but also provide kind of the maximum in-class instruction as we possibly can, because we know that the kids will be much more successful if we have them there the greatest amount of time. We've impacted our bell schedule a little bit, and so that the juniors in the morning, for instance, in many secondary schools will actually have a bit of a break. And while the seniors are still in class, and they'll have their lunch a little bit early, and then when they come back into class, then the seniors would come out and have their lunch period. And that way, when we're in our lunch periods, up to half the school would be still in class, and half the school would be having lunch. And so, again, trying to minimize the traffic in the hallways. But that being said, we'll be setting up areas in the school where cohorts would stay and mingle when they're having lunch. And so again, maintaining that those groupings when we're having lunch. And then again, if students have to go beyond their cohort area at lunchtime, then they'd have to have a mask on and follow the physical distancing protocols. So trying to make sure, again, that we have some flexibility with the kids so they're feeling good about being in school, but also controlling the situation so that they're as safe as possible. Right? those zones, by the way, will be set up in a way that will have the opportunity for the kids to have lunch in there, but also to be able to have, in some schools, their lunch delivered there if they're, because we're hoping to have the cafeteria, for instance, still available to students. And some schools, if they're smaller a little bit, then they might be able to actually go directly to the cafeteria where they would line up in a physically just manner the same way as they do when you go to the store, that kind of thing. Right? The traffic flow, again, has been worked on by all our schools in terms of depending on, again, the number of students and the size of the hallways, whether or not the traffic would go one direction or whether or not we divide hallways into left and right. So again, we can maintain good physical distancing in the hallways. We'll have hand washing stations at each of the entrances. And no doubt we'll be asking students to bring hand sanitizer with them. We'll be reminding students consistently to wash their hands. And again, I think hopefully bringing the kids together to understand that in order for us to make this thing work, we have to all work together. And when we do, that we can actually make this thing happen and be really successful in providing a robust learning experience while we keep everybody safe. Certainly, there'll be opportunities for the students that need learning support to get that support. And again, part of that scheduling, by the way, will be that we can offer some of that support before school and after school, which isn't really before school and after school. So if school starts at 8:30 normally, first half hour, we'll offer support to students who need some support. And then the schedule would actually start at 9. And if school normally ended at 2:40, school might end at 2:10, and we'd have some more support for kids after school as well. The average class time during the day would be about 2 hours, maybe a little bit more. So again, making sure the kids that are struggling have the support that they need. So like I said, secondary principal's been working really hard for the last couple of weeks to try and create this plan that'll provide really good, robust programming for kids and a safe place for them to come and learn. And looking forward to our students joining us again. So without further ado, though, I will introduce Mr. Barry Bunyan, his Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, and he's going to address some of the questions that have been asked.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank our principals this evening, Ms. Simonetto, Mr. Reeve, and Mr. Gobriel for spending time tonight to share with everybody all the incredible amount of planning and efforts that have gone in to implement the different requirements from the Ministry and the Provincial Health Office in order to make sure that our schools are safe and that students can attend and learn. So thank you very much for coming this evening. What I will be doing is spending some time in the next few minutes looking at some of the questions. You have been good at sending questions to us in advance. There's been quite a number of questions that have come in. A lot of the questions do repeat themselves or fall among certain themes. I will spend some time in the next few minutes talking specifically about some general health and safety questions. These questions will all basically apply to all of the schools in the district in some way, although you've heard from our three principals tonight that the different details at each school can vary depending on elementary, middle, secondary size, all those different things. What will happen as we go through is that we did list the questions throughout the next number of slides. We wanted to make sure that everyone knew that your questions did reach us and that they were here. However, through some of the comments of the superintendent to start and our principals and myself, we will get to some slides that where the questions have already been answered. And if that's the case, we will let you know that and we will move along to some of the ones that haven't been answered. So health and safety, facilities and staff, there have been a significant number of questions. And the first two do have to do with teachers, teaching on call, and EAs or spares, our staff that go into schools to replace people who are absent. How does that work? We're talking about cohorts, and how does it work when you have people who don't belong to the cohorts assigned to the schools? And I want to make sure that everyone understands that even though we will assign students into cohorts in schools, even without TTOCs, there will be times where the cohorts will come in contact with other people who are in the school every day that don't belong to their cohort, such as the teacher librarian or the counselor or the principal or the vice principal. So there are specific recommendations from the provincial health office to deal with that, and they apply to our TTOCs and EAs as well. Basically, if you are coming in contact with a cohort, you are meant to establish physical distancing of 6 feet. If that's not possible, you are to wear a mask. Now, this will take a different effect in different classes, elementary, middle, and secondary. These will all be worked out at the school with the administration and the teachers. And we've asked these questions of the provincial health office and Fraser Health, and they have assured us that this will keep people safe. As far as specific health and safety training, all of our staff, the staff that are in schools will do it on the first week, on the first 2 days at their sites. Our TTOCs and EAs will also have training. Everybody will be trained on the different health and safety aspects that will go into all of our schools, hand washing cohorts, all of the different things. So that is in place, and that will happen during the first few days of school in September. Lots of questions about air ventilation. Yes, there have been upgrades. We are currently in the process of upgrading our filtration system to a higher grade of filtration. And we are working with WorkSafe and with other districts to make sure that our ventilation is safe and is running at the amounts that it needs to. So that is being worked on as we speak. Sinks, there's a lot of questions about having cold water. So there is actually no effect at all of whether the water is hot or cold. The important thing for washing hands is about the soap. It is the soap that actually breaks up any potential coronavirus that might be on your hand. Whether the water is hot or cold will have no effect at all. And so some of our sinks do have cold water, but that won't have any negative effect. Will elementary kids wear masks? The provincial government has funded and required us to purchase masks for staff and for students. Right now, there is no requirement for primary students to wear masks, so that's K to grade 3. And we will have masks available at the schools for grades 4 to 12. And the requirement there will be if they are in common areas where they're coming in contact with different cohorts and they can't maintain physical distancing, they can wear a mask. The middle and secondary schools, if they are taking buses, will have to wear masks. So there are some specific times where students will have to wear masks. In their cohort, they do not have to wear a mask because that's one of the reasons we've gone to a cohort model. However, for both staff and students, if an individual makes a personal choice to wear a mask, that will obviously be respected. If your child is sick or absent for an extended period of time, this is nothing that's new to public education. We have children that are sick or absent for like a day or longer in any given year, any given time. So we have established well-known and well-worked out processes for that. For the most part, that will be done in consultation with the principal or the teacher at the school. If your child is sick for an extended period of time, work will be worked out and some sort of program will be set in place. This is not an unusual thing or new for this year. So going on to the second slide, do I have to fill out a daily health check form every day and submit it to the school? So this is, I feel, a question that's coming from a parent. So we are required to do daily health checks for both staff and students every day. That's part of one of the key strategies for keeping our schools safe, because if anybody has a symptom, they are to stay home and seek medical advice, and therefore we don't take the risk of having them come and potentially infect somebody. Parents will all be sent a daily health form before school starts that we're going to ask to sign and return. In fact, I think you get two, one to keep and one to return. And that will be your guide to do the daily health check. So what will happen is we will ask parents to do the daily health check with their children every morning before sending them off to school. If they tick yes to anything on the form, the parents are asked to keep the child home and seek medical advice about next steps. Daily health checks for staff, we will also be asking them to do the exact same thing. Do visitors need health checks? At every one of our schools, there'll be a designated entrance for visitors to come. We ask visitors to make appointments in advance, if at all possible. There is a series of questions that will be listed at the door. If a person answers yes to any of the questions, they will not be allowed to enter the building. Similar to what you see in a lot of stores and businesses around town. So yes, there will be health checks. If a staff or student is sick, if they're sick before coming to school, we are asking them to stay home, and therefore we keep people safe by simply not having someone who is sick at the school. If while they are at the school, they develop a symptom, if something happens and they develop a symptom of an illness while they're at school, we have specific protocols in place for both staff and students that involve isolating the individual so that they are not in contact with others. If it's a student, parents will be contacted immediately and asked to come pick up their child to seek medical advice, and et cetera. So we have protocols for that. My family member is sick, but my child is not. Why can they still go to school? So if your family member is sick and you know that it is not COVID, so you've sought medical advice and your doctor has told you it's not a COVID-related illness, your child can certainly come to school. If the family member is sick with COVID, then your doctor or 811 will give you advice on whether or not the child could come to school, but likely they would have to stay and get tested or something like that. Again, we rely on all medical issues. We rely on our medical professionals to guide us. Will I be required to have my child tested every time they are sick? That is really not up to the school to determine. That would be up to your family practitioner or 811 to determine. If your child is sick, we ask you to contact them. They will guide you on whether or not there's a test involved or what the next steps are. Why aren't parents automatically told about a staff or student having COVID-19? So this, I know, is a big question in the community and all communities. Fraser Health and the local health authorities are the ones in charge about how to react to anybody who is test positive to COVID-19. Information on an individual's personal health is private. That's part of the Canada's human rights. So information is not generally shared. We are not the ones who determine who gets told or how things are told. That comes from Fraser Health. We follow their guidance. And then they will indicate to us, they will either make contact themselves with the people affected. They will have the strategy developed depending on the situation that we're dealing with at the time. So this next slide is about remote learning. These are all questions that have been touched on already previously in the presentation. So we did have these questions, but we'll be moving on from those. And again, learning groups, you got a lot of detailed information from our principals about how all this has happened, and our superintendent has touched on it as well. So again, these have all been answered as we've gone through. So at this point, I'd like to introduce our Director, Mike Morgan, who's going to talk on the next set of slides.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bunyan. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us tonight. We understand that at issue right now is many people are having a difficult decision about what do I decide and how do I do what's best for my child as they return to school in stage 2. And that is especially true for parents, grandparents, and caregivers of children with diverse abilities. What I hope to be able to do tonight is answer your questions about what enhanced services will my child with diverse abilities look like during stage 2 under each of the different opportunities that the district will offer and can offer. Next slide, please. So in-person supports, when students return to school, things will look nearly exactly the same as they did before COVID. The exception to this would be when you're receiving supports such as SLP, speech and language supports from district staff and specialists. There is enhanced safety precautions that we must follow to ensure the safety of our staff and your child. We follow a flow chart which goes through to make decisions. Can that staff physical distance? If they cannot, can we implement environmental measures? If we cannot, the staff member is required to wear personal protective equipment. That will be communicated to our staff clearly when they begin to return, and that will be communicated to everyone who is receiving the supports as well. In person, we'll continue to receive SEA, direct and indirect support, youth care worker, direct and indirect support, and a resource teacher with indirect and direct support who collaborates with parents, teachers, community support, and district staff to meet the student's IEP goals. Next slide, please. Our other option, which many of you have been made aware of tonight by Mr. Stewart, is distributed learning. In our case, K-12 through UConnect, where students attend twice a week. There, parents can expect to attend to have direct and indirect support when students are physically in attendance from SEAs. From a youth care worker, you would receive direct and indirect support, whether you are in attendance or at home on those days. From the resource teacher, again, you would receive the same direct and indirect support. And from district staff, you would receive direct and indirect support when students are physically in attendance that week. Next slide, please. In terms of the transitions program that we are looking to develop, this is what people would probably really want to know. What will this look like for my child with diverse abilities? So if needed, an SEA will be able to provide remote check-in via Teams daily. If needed, youth care worker will be able to provide remote check-in via Teams. The resource teacher will be able to provide virtual support and continue to collaborate with parents, teachers, community support, and district staff to meet IEP goals. District staff, such as speech and language pathologists, would be able to provide virtual and indirect support and consultations with other educators. Next slide, please. Homeschooling. Very important to note that in homeschooling, a family member delivers the entire educational program to a child at home. There would be no SEA support, no youth care worker, no resource teacher, and no district staff. We would offer, as required, we would offer help in evaluating student performance, and parents could take that help if they chose to or not. However, again, no SEA, no youth care worker, no resource teacher, and no district staff. Next slide, please. Very important, our next piece, which will involve a hospital homebound, is what if my child or a member of my household is immune suppressed or immune compromised? And it's very important for our community to note that a medical note for this is required. So I'll take you through the next steps if people qualify for this support when they are immune suppressed or immune compromised. Next slide, please. Our hospital homebound program provides services and instruction to students who are expected to be away from school due to illness or other medical reasons for themselves or another member of the household. These services are provided 2 to 3 times per week for approximately 50 minutes per session. Regularly, our hospital homebound program, an incredible program run by 3 amazing teachers, has a time limit. But in this case, as we're responding to COVID, we're going to shift some of our practices, extend the period that we have available to access hospital homebound programming. The important part on this is your hospital homebound teacher is going to be the hub and the person who connects with you should you be eligible for this option. Next slide, please. So you, if your child is identified, your child will have a resource teacher who is going to coordinate the educational programming with parents, teachers, community, support staff, and district staff. And that resource teacher will provide information to hospital homebound teacher to meet IEP goals. Again, you're going to have 3 teachers working together to coordinate the educational programming. And when needed, we will, on an individual basis, look at what those additional supports are needed for each individual child. I can appreciate the difficult decision that many people have when you do not have the information that you need to make that decision. I'm hoping that tonight and moving forward, we'll be able to provide you with the most accurate information that will allow you as a parent of a child with diverse abilities to make the decision that works best for you and your family. Finally, in regards to your hospital homebound, you must connect with your doctor Your doctor would then advise you best on what to do. They would provide a note, and then you would connect directly with your school principal. Again, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Wishing you all the best in this brand new school year.
Thanks, Mike. Lots of information there, and certainly, again, I appreciate in terms of the complexity, in terms of our students with diverse abilities, and all the supports that we're going to make sure that are in place to support our kids. Just again, the reminder of next steps going forward. Again, you're going to get the school plans are going to go out on Friday. Going to go Friday afternoon, and again, importance of that survey there. And what I hope you're hearing tonight is a few things. What you've heard tonight is our commitment as a district to make sure that we're going to put the conditions in place for your children to be safe and to have an incredible learning experience. I also hope that you've heard that should you, after having an opportunity through looking at the district school plans, going out visiting the school, should you still have some concerns, that we need you to express that to your building administrator so that our district can look at ways that we can assist in you transitioning back. Because we do understand that for some of you that may be a longer process, and we're going to have to sit down as a district and kind of work through with folks in terms of how we can best serve the needs of all of our kids. And that is a commitment that we will make sure that we stand by in the days ahead. I'd like to thank all the staff here tonight that took part in terms of coming on out and sharing with you either the school-based experience, the district plan, answering questions, a lot of information there. And I'm sure as you listen tonight, you're thinking there's more questions that are going to be that I need to have addressed. You can make sure you send those in. Again, I can assure you that Joe, our communications manager, continues to monitor that. Continues to make sure that we can do the research that required to address those questions and to get that information out to you. And our website is absolutely awesome. And the Q&A on there is intended to be something that continues to evolve and to make sure you do that. So you made an effort tonight to get informed. And there's going to be a lot more information coming your way. We hope you continue to take every step possible to make sure that you feel good about what will transform in terms of the coming weeks for your child and your family. So on that note, unless there's anything else, I think we're good. Thank you. I think we came in just under 8 o'clock, which is great. And I hope all of you have a great evening and good night.